Hey everybody, here today to kind of walk you through the contents of the bag and maybe a couple of usability things related to the camera packages that were purchased predominantly for national board certification with teachers. So first thing I got is this Argus bag right here. Second thing I got here is this tripod. These are the two things that you'll walk out with from central office or that you'll receive from us if me or one of my interns delivers it to you. These are the two things that have to come back, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible, and this video is part of that pursuit. So in the side of the bag, there is a long, skinny pocket. In this pocket, there are some papers, or a paper maybe, once we're totally done. The paper looks like this. It's a checklist, right? On the back of it, you will see a photograph linked to every single item that goes in the bag. So the goal here is to make sure that when you get it, you have everything that was intended to be there. And then when you return it, we have everything that was intended to be there. And we can have an easy way to check that everything's in there inventory-wise. This is really important because these bags are shared literally among 800 people. So we need to make sure that everything finds its way back into the bag. So from time to time during this video, I will flash this up on the screen so that you can kind of see the item in the list that we're talking about. So let's just go through it real fast. First of all, let's start with a tripod. That's the easy one. I don't want to spend a lot of time teaching you guys how to set up a tripod because I'm guessing you can figure it out. But I got to do it anyway. So I'm going to take the tripod out of the bag. Notice that this, what we call on the sheet, the base plate is not on the tripod. That is on purpose. We recommend never leaving the base plate on the tripod. It's best if you leave the base plate screwed into the camera. That's the way it'll be when you get it. You might as well just leave it on there when you turn it back in. Also, it's kind of a hassle to unscrew, so you might as well just leave it on. So I'm going to set up the tripod. It has 3 levels of telescope. So you have this one, and this one, and you can get this mug like above 6 feet. So it's really, really tall. And then you get additional height using the crank. So right here, I have a crank, and I can just crank it up, and I get myself an additional maybe 18 inches or something like that. So it's a really, really good tripod, but it's not impervious to breaking, right? As a Jets Press teacher, I had this exact model the first year. Now we have 0 of them. So you have to really take care of them. They're good, but they're not super durable. So just be careful with them. You can figure out how these things work. Everything needs to be loosened before you manipulate it, right? Otherwise you strip it. It's just like any other mechanical thing. So I'm going to loosen this, and then once I have it where I want it, I'm going to tighten it down. It's the same way with the rotating axis. I want to loosen it before I attempt to turn it, and then once I have it where I want it to stay, I tighten it down. So that's really important that you always loosen things before you maneuver. All right, so got the tripod going. Let's look at some other things in the bag. I'm just going to unzip the bag. We're going to look in the giant main compartment first. When you get it, one of us at central office will have assembled it back to its default state. What we have here, I'm going to just kind of take it down the list. We have the regular JVC camcorder. That is this big thing right here. It has a lens built into the camera that's not removable, so you don't have to worry about that. But this top part that I'm holding right now is removable. If you notice, there's a screw here. If I unscrew it, I can actually remove this whole unit. This is the microphone unit, the audio unit. So when you get it, this item, the audio component, will be on there. But if for any reason it's removed, you take it and you press it in. There's a hole on top with like a little, just like a little plate that goes down. It's spring-loaded. You can push this down and then back it up, and it locks into place. And then you just screw it in. All right. So now you've got the JVC camcorder with the audio adapter built on top. This should always stay on, but just in case, know that you can put it back on yourself, push it down, move it, screw it in. What you'll notice on this audio unit is that there are 2 microphone inputs. You have mic input 1, mic input 2. This is called a shotgun mic. It is plugged by default into input 1. And then the next item is the wireless lapel. I think we call it wireless lav on the list. It stands for lavalier. This is the receiver, and it should always be mounted on top, and it should always be plugged into input 2. So that's the way it's going to come when you get it. More on this in a second. Let's look at what else is in our bag, and then we'll go back to the camera. You have a bag with headphones in it. So got some headphones. I highly recommend you always use headphones. Worst thing you could do, get this thing set up, create a stellar lesson, execute it flawlessly, and then you come back and realize you have beautiful video with no audio. And if you do that, you will not be the first one to do it, and you will not be the last. It is the most common mistake when making videos. People forget to check audio either on the meters of the screen or in their headphones. So I'm going to take these headphones and I'm going to plug them in on the back of the camera. I remove this little flap and I plug it into the headphone. There's an icon that looks just like you would expect. So I'm going to plug that in. All right. So now I've got my headphones plugged into my camera. I'm going to mount this onto the tripod, and it's really easy to do. If you have the tripod facing that way, the camera faces that way as well, that means that this little lever back here that you can maneuver the tripod with is facing toward you. You'll put the camera on at an angle and slide it in, and then press it down, and it clicks. All right, so now it's clicked. I did not tighten that. Let me tighten it. All right, so now I've got the tripod mounted to, or the camera mounted to the tripod, got my headphones plugged in, and I'm getting close to ready to shoot. Now we need to look at a few other things. On the list, the camera, there is the lens cap, probably the most frequently lost item in all camera bags. Careful with this. My recommendation is when you start shooting, you take this, drop it in the bag. That way when you come back to take it down, you know exactly where it is. So I'm going to put that back on. The next thing is the battery. There is a battery on the camera, and it will be on the camera when you get it, and it will be charged when you get it. But the battery does come off. So I'm going to press the battery release button, and here's the battery. So you want to double check, that's why we put it on the list, just double check that you are including the battery with the camera. So you're also going to have a charger with this camera, and it plugs into the back where it says DC. It's another flap, pull it off, plug it in. You can even have it plugged in while you're shooting, which is pretty recommended if you're just going to leave a camera set up in the corner of the room with a tripod. You might as well have it plugged in so you know you don't have to worry about battery juice. But just make sure that the charger is included in the bag when you return it. And it looks like any other charger, it plugs into the wall, and it is listed on this inventory sheet as well. So the next thing we want to look at is the SanDisk 64 gigabyte SD card. On the side of the camera here, if you open this door, you'll notice a little clear, like a transparent flap, and we're going to open that flap. There are 2 slots. We're only going to give you 1 card. That's all you need. If you press down, you'll see you have an SD card here. This holds a ton of footage, okay? Hours and hours and hours, if not days of footage. So it's a good card. You can take this card out. You can plug it into your Dell laptop or your Mac, if you have a Mac, and you put it in. You can load this footage on there and keep it, put it on Google Drive, edit it if you like, or send it to us to be edited. Or you can just return it to us. We'll load it, edit it for you, and send it to you via Google Drive. So that's how you use the SD card. It doesn't really matter which slot you put it in, but you might as well put it in the first one, which is A, as opposed to B. So I'm going to insert it and you press it, and it's spring-loaded, and it pops. We'll close that door. Okay, so you got the SD card. I told you already about the shotgun mic. You have the lavalier receiver plugged in here, the wireless receiver. To complement that in the bag, there is a wireless transmitter, and it looks virtually identical. The only real difference is the transmitter says TX, as in T for transmitter, and the receiver says RX, R for receiver. So we're going to take this receiver, and inside the bag you have a small bag that's labeled with the word Rode, R-O-D-E. It's an Australian manufacturer of microphones. Inside this thing you got a little windsock that you're probably never going to use. Please don't lose this because they are high quality, but you just probably don't need it. This is for like outdoor shooting over 10-mile-an-hour wind, basically. Most likely you're in a classroom, so I wouldn't worry about that. So now we have a lavalier microphone with what's called an alligator clip. this alligator clip can be removed, but if it's on there, there's no reason to. To remove it, you squeeze it and just take it off. Then you put the cylinder back through after squeezing it and let go, and now it's locked back on. So here's the lavalier mic. There's a little tangle in my line. I'm not going to clean that up right now just for the sake of time. I'm going to screw the end of this microphone into the transmitter until it won't let me screw anymore. And then I'm going to power it on, simple power button. I'm going to hold that for about 2 seconds and let go. I'm also going to turn on the receiver over here. You do not need to turn on the shotgun mic. It is receiving power at all times from the camera, something called 48 volts or phantom power. You don't have to worry about that, but you do have to turn on transmitter and receiver to get this guy to work. Now you put this on your belt loop or in your pocket or whatever you want. It's pretty big, so maybe on a belt would be good. So maybe wearing a slinky dress on the day of filming may be problematic. Just something to think about. You may not have anywhere to put the transmitter. And then you clip this on your clothes however you can. The recommendation is that the microphone never touches clothes, right? The alligator clip can, but for me, it's really easy. Just throw it on my tie. If you're wearing a slinky dress or something though, you might have a problem. You might not know exactly where to put this. You could just kind of squeeze the shirt or the dress and clip it on. That's probably the best thing to do. You want to make sure the microphone is not touching clothing. It will pick up. It's very, very sensitive to that kind of stuff. So that's how that works. Now we have a couple of things on this list that you may not notice if you're checking inventory. So I don't want to freak you out if you don't see it. So I'm just going to cover it real quick. We have the XLR to 3.5 millimeter converter, which attaches to the lav receiver, which is a lot of fancy talk, meaning when on this microphone input right here, I'm going to unplug it, right here, you'll see there that this thing isn't actually part of this kit. We had to buy it separately. So this thing comes off. That's what we mean when we say XLR to 3.5 millimeter. So we just want to make sure that's on and attached. If it's plugged in to this camera, you know you have it because there's no way to plug that mic in without it. But that is on the list because it is losable. So we made sure it was on there. Now I want to move on to a couple of pockets. On the other side of this large bag, you have two medium-sized pockets. The one that's got the most in it, let's look at that first. This is a microphone cable, also known as an XLR cable. I think it's 25 feet, maybe 30. It's pretty long. It can stretch just about as long as you need it to in a regular traditional classroom. So we'll just know we have that. We'll say that for a second. Now, I would just like to point out, you have in the other pocket, this bag that says Audio Technica on it. Let's have a quick look at what's inside there. If I open this guy up, I will find a couple of things. First thing I see is what's called a boundary microphone or a table mic. Some people call it an omni mic. Technically there are other microphones that are omnidirectional, but it is an omni mic. If I place it down, the reason it's called omni is it picks up 360 degrees. So it also picks up really equally regardless of the distance. So if I'm right next to it talking, it's going to sound almost the same as if I'm 15 feet away talking at the same volume. It's a really cool mic. This mic is very useful for full classroom conversations, if you want to capture some discussion for your National Board videos, or if you want to go group to group. So let's say you got 4 groups in your room, and you're going to be facilitating group 1 for a while. You could actually just kind of nonchalantly place this mic on their table, hang out with them, do some talking. If you have a lav on your tie or your shirt, it's going to pick you up great. That's mostly for the students, right? And then when you move over to table number 2 with the other 4 or 5 kids, you can just take this and move it over to that other table, and now it's picking up their conversation. So that's really why we picked this up for you guys. This is an excellent microphone. I recommend trying it. You can take this little twist tie off. It's just like a little bread tie. You can remove that and get an additional 20 or 30 feet. So this plus this, because they go together, you've got like 50 to 60 feet. So you can do lots of cool creative things with audio. So the other thing that's in this little Audio Technica pouch is this thing. And it's listed as the Audio Technica power module on the list. What you'll need to do is you'll notice the microphone has a plug at the bottom, but it's not the right size to plug into a camera. So we're going to plug that into the power module. You can't mess this up, it only goes in one place. And then we're going to turn the power module on the side. There's off, flat, and then there's this little slanted thing. It really doesn't matter which one of those you pick as long as it's not off. So I'm going to switch it on. And then I am going to take this cable, I'm going to untie it, and I'm going to plug the only side of it that can go in. It's the female end, and I'm going to plug it into this power module. So now what I've got is I've got a boundary table mic on one side of this chain, and on the other side of the chain I have a microphone input. I'm going to take this, I'm going to plug it into my camera. At this point, I have to know which one of these two microphones I can subtract from the equation. You can only have two at a time, but we're supplying you with 3 mics. You've got the wireless lapel mic that the teacher can wear. You've got the shotgun mic, which only picks up what it's pointing at. And then you've got this omnidirectional table mic. So you have to kind of analyze your lesson, or call me or my intern and we'll talk with you through it. You have to analyze the situation and the type of lesson you're making. Once you make a decision, you might say, okay, I want the wireless lapel, I know, and then I want the table mic in the middle of my classroom, or hanging on the wall, picking up everybody, if you can figure that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just press this button and unplug the shotgun mic, and I'm just going to kind of wrap it around this. Don't have to remove it from the camera, there's no reason to. Just might as well leave it mounted, just unplug it. Now I can take this XLR or microphone cable and I can run it up to my camera. And I can place that table mic anywhere I want. So I'm going to plug this in instead. So now I've chosen the 2 mics that I want. Just because this shotgun mic is still mounted on the camera doesn't matter. We're not using it. We're going to use the wireless lapel for the teacher and the table mic for the students. All right. On the side of the camera, you have some audio inputs settings. You have channel 1 and channel 2. It's going to come to you the way we recommend you use it. You shouldn't have to mess with any of this. But when you're recording, you should see 2 independent audio meters on the screen. If you don't, you can press the display button right here on the side of the camera, and it will display for you audio input 1, audio input 2, and it'll show you how loud each of those signals is. Audio input 1 in this case is going to be this table microphone. Audio input 2 in this case is going to be the wireless receiver. Our recommendation is that you set up the day before and shoot some test footage, because you want to make sure that you can hear everything that you're looking for. Let's say you recorded your test session one day and you realized you sound great. Your wireless lapel that you have clipped on you sounds perfect, it's loud enough, but the table mic is just kind of faint. It's not loud enough for the purposes that you're looking for. In that case, you can come over, you can find that input 1 has a little wheel here. The wheel is set to 5. I can crank that wheel up a little bit and make it louder. So that's one thing that you can do to make one mic or the other mic louder or softer. What you're looking for is a nice balance between the two. That's your goal. And that wheel will help you get there. To actually engage that wheel though, you have to change the audio select from auto to manual. And it says auto and manual. So just clip it, just switch it over to manual, and then you can adjust this wheel. I like auto. It seems to be working pretty well for everybody, so that shouldn't be a problem. Just want to make sure that you know what that is, just in case it comes up. So that is pretty much everything that's inside the bag. You have the tripod base plate that I just want to, which I already talked about, but I just want to make sure that we all know what we're talking about. To remove the camera, I'm actually going to unplug this long microphone cable. To remove the camera from the tripod, on the side there is a little spring-loaded lever. If I pull it from one way to the other, 180 degrees, I can just tear this off. It just kind of breaks off. Maybe that's the wrong word, but it does. So now I have it. On the bottom of the camera is your base plate. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this thing should just stay on all the time. So once you're done, just take the camera, unplug the headphones, close it up, put this whole contraption, including the base plate, back in the bag, and then start loading up everything else. So that's the base plate. All right, so when you're done, you want to try your best to put everything back how it was. So you're going to take the headphones, wrap the cable around it, place it back in the mic in the headphone bag. Make sure you take everything that was part of the table mic kit and put it all back into this Audio-Technica bag. So all of this stuff, microphone and the power module, all goes back in. You want to make sure that your really long XLR that gets you more length, you're going to make sure that that's wrapped up nicely and that this tie is around. It's a Velcro tie. And then you're going to put these things back into, roughly, if you can remember, the pockets that you got it in. When you return this kit to us, it's going to filter through me or an intern before we issue it back out. So we're going to charge your batteries. We're going to probably wipe the SD cards if we know that that footage is secure on Google Drive or somewhere. And we are going to kind of reset everything back to its default. But it'd be super cool if you could just go through and make sure not only is everything in there, but it's roughly where it needs to be and not just kind of haphazardly thrown in the bag. One last thing, everybody. So we didn't go super crazy into how to use the camera. Most of that's because we set it up. We bought this camera on purpose because it has a really great automatic mode and we don't want you to have to worry about it. But there are like 50 to 100 buttons on the camera. Can be a little intimidating. 2 or 3 I want you to know about. First one is the display button I already talked about briefly. You hit that, you're going to be able to see the audio meters on this little LCD screen. So you can see whether or not the microphone is actually getting a signal. Press it again, turns it off. Then you also have a couple of buttons you need to know. First one is how do you turn it on? Right here on the left side, right above the little door, the viewer, you're going to press down on the little blue notch and turn it on, or press down on the little blue notch and turn it off. That's on-off for the camera, the whole system. And then on the back, there's a record button, and it's red, as you would expect. Press it, it starts rolling. Press it again, it stops rolling. The only other thing you really need to know if it's on fully automatic mode is right here at the top, you have W and T. That's wide and tight. That's your zoom, right? So you hold T to go zoom in a little bit, or you hold W and it zooms out a little bit. Usually for National Board videos, people go as wide as possible and just leave the camera sitting there. But if you do need to zoom, that's how you do that. Everything else probably shouldn't touch, honestly, unless you're having some kind of problems. But we'll come meet with you face-to-face when you pick it up or if we deliver it to you, and we'll spend as long as you need to get a little bit more familiar with the camera system. All right, happy shooting. See ya.